This is video 1.3 on expanding double brackets. Now, before we move on to this video, it's really clear to point out that this is for higher students only. Higher only. So if you're sitting the foundation paper, then you don't need to do this, okay? You don't need to know this. This is for grade B and above. So if you're doing a foundation paper, then I'd recommend you got really good at the grade C work, and then perhaps the teacher can consider whether you're ready for the higher paper once you can do that. Okay, right, with that said then, we're going to move on, and because it's now on the higher, I'm going to try and make it a little bit more complicated while hopefully still explaining. Now these are three different questions, three different expansions, which you could be expected to do. Now question 1 and question 2 are actually grade C, and question 3 is grade B. Now there's an issue that a lot of students mistake the first two for the third type. We do a lot of practice in the schools on the third type, which is a double bracket expansion, and because it's got two brackets there, the students think this and this are the same as that. Okay, and they're not. They're dealt with differently, and you've got to understand what they're saying. This one is saying 2 plus 3 of these brackets, whatever's in this bracket, so 2 plus 3 lots of this, x plus 2. This question is saying 3 lots of this bracket plus 2 lots of whatever's in this bracket. Whereas this question, which we're moving on to now, is x plus 2 lots of x plus 6. So it's everything in this bracket multiplied by everything in this bracket. Now there is a video 1.2 to explain how to do this type. So if you've always mistaken these two for this and keep getting them wrong in questions or when you're doing problems, then you need to go back and look. The key thing here is that there's a plus there, not a multiply. These two brackets have a multiply symbol between them, but this one, these two are added here. Okay? Right, so moving on to this type then, the type that we're looking at now. Before we go there, let's look at how we're taught, or how we teach you how to multiply. So let's do 14 times by 12. Now the way that we recommend you multiply is that we use a grid. Okay, because then we can split the 14 up into 10 plus 4 times by 10 plus 2. So mathematically those two questions are the same. 14 lots of 12 is the same as 14 lots of 12. It's just we split the 14 into 10 and a 4 and the 12 into a 10 and a 2. Okay? So we need 10 lots of everything in this bracket and 4 lots of everything in this bracket. Now there's a couple, well, there's 2 or 3 ways of doing it. What you could do is say, right, well, if you do 10 lots of, you need 10 times by 10 and 10 times by 2. Then you need 4 times by 10 and 4 times by 2. And if you work all of those out, that's 100, 20, 40 and 8. And if you add that together, you get 168. So that's one way of doing that calculation, and that might be a way of you've been taught how to calculate larger numbers by splitting them into numbers that we know, because we know the first 10 times tables, so if we can split them up into 10 times table. And also multiplying by 10 is nice and straightforward. Another way of doing that question would be to use a grid. So we can split the 10 and the 4, that's the 14, and the 10 and the 2, that's the 12. 10 10s are 100, 10 4s are 40, 10 2s are 20, and 2 4s are 8. And again we add those 4 answers together and we get 168. And that's certainly a way that I'm going to recommend that a lot of you start off multiplying out your brackets. But if you look at this, we've done 10 lots of 10. So if I draw an arrow, we've got 10 lots of 10. And then we've got 10 lots of 2. And then we've got 4 lots of 10. And 4 lots of 2. So we can think of it that way. And you'll see a lot of students being taught things like FOIL, But also there's this one where you do like a smiley face. They're the eyebrows. I've had one student once said it looked like a bit like a monkey. Okay, there's the nose, there's a smiley face, 10 tens. But okay, again, it works and it helps you think about it, but really it's a little trick to help you multiply it out. And what I don't want you to do is just think, you have to always do it that way, because what happens when it's a 3 term, and I'll show you one of those later on. What I want you to think about is, if you look here, this 10 has been times by both things inside that bracket, and that 4 has been times by both things in that bracket, which is the same as what we wrote up above, because it's everything in this bracket multiplied by everything in that bracket. And if we do that, we get 100 plus 40 plus 20 plus 8, which is 168. So all three ways are the same thing. We're multiplying everything in one bracket by everything in the next. Okay? And basically that's what we're going to do in a minute with unknowns as well, with two terms. Two brackets with more than one term in. Let's start with a nice basic one. X plus 1 multiplied by x plus 1. So there's a couple of ways we can do this. The more able mathematicians perhaps will do it in their head with practice, although there's no marks for getting things wrong in an exam, so even if you are more able, it might be worth you making sure you don't make a mistake. Or you might multiply it out like this: x plus another x plus x squared plus 1, which if we rearrange, x squared plus 2x plus 1. So we've simplified and we've moved the term of the highest order, the highest power, which is the x squared here, to the front. So that's x squared plus 2x plus 1. So that's one way of doing it. As I said, your teacher may have taught you FOIL, they might have taught you another method. Another method I quite like is to say, well, let's do the x times by the x plus 1, and then the 1 times by the x plus 1, like that. So what we've turned it into is two single brackets, like the video that we did before, because it's x times by that bracket, and it's 1 times that by that bracket. And then if we multiply the individual brackets out, please go and watch the video that I did on this type. 1 point is the previous video. Then you get the same answer, x squared plus 2x plus 1. So that's quite a nice way of doing it, and that's more mathematical than this idea of using the smiley face. Smiley face is there as a visual aid. There's no smiley faces involved in mathematics, it's just how it helps us understand what we're doing. But probably the best way, particularly when you start off, or particularly when questions get harder, and I'll show you an example of a hard question in a minute where most students would do it this way, is to split it up as if we were multiplying two numbers, which we are. And we're splitting into a grid. So now we can multiply the x by the x by the 1, the x by the 1, and the 1 by the 1. Remember, you're multiplying, not adding. Students who make a mistake with this, add, oops, and just as I said it, I did it. Okay, and you get x squared plus 2x plus 1, because I've added together. You've got x squared there, you've got an x plus an x, make 2x, and you've got the 1 left over there to add on as well. So lots of different ways of expanding brackets. It's up to you which one you use. I recommend you either do it this way. You can or cannot draw the little lines on if you wish, or you could just do it in your head. But if you're not getting those correct, or you keep making mistakes, then I would go for this method to make sure. Okay, A-level students can normally go straight to grade A, GCSE can go straight to here, but when we get more complicated questions, and even in further mathematics, students will use the grid, and I will still use the grid when the questions get more complicated, and I'll show you an example in a minute. Right, so here's an example for you to try. X plus 1 times by x minus 2. So lots of different ways, but I recommend either multiplying them out on your own, using the idea of the smiley face, although obviously don't get too fixated on it being smiley face, and or grid. It's up to you. So pause the video and Okay, so I hope you got it right. I'm going to expand it, so I'm going to do the x times by the x to give me x squared. Then I'm going to do the 1 times by the x to give me 1x. Then I'm going to do the x times by the minus 2 to give me minus 2x. And I'm going to do the 1 times by the minus 2 to give me minus 2, which is x squared minus x minus 2. Now, if you found that difficult to follow, which is totally understandable, I can understand that, then maybe you want to consider just quickly drawing it out in a grid. There's no shame in doing this. I'd much prefer you do this and get it right than rush it and get it wrong. As I said, there's no marks for getting stuff wrong in an exam and trying to look clever. So minus 2x and minus 2, and you'll see that's exactly the same then if I write it out. X take away 2x's is minus x, and then take away 2. Okay? So 2 ways of doing it. I did it in my head. I could have used the arrows, so there's x squared, and then there's x, and then there's minus 2x, and then there's that one there. So that was how I did it, but I just didn't draw the arrows on. And then you just have to be careful with negative numbers. So here's an example for you to try again. And again, as I said, be careful with the negative numbers. So pause your video and try this one, please. Okay, right. I'm going to go straight to a grid this time. So if you used a grid, great. If you did it in using just expansion as you can, using the lines or the arrows or turning it into a face, that's fine. So x times by x is x squared. X times by minus 6 is minus 6x. X times by minus 3 is minus 3x, and minus 3 times by minus 6 is positive 18. Okay, so now that's 1x squared, that's minus 6, take away another 3 is minus 9x, and we're left with 18. And again, if it's those negative numbers hurting you, go and fix it, ask for help. So that's the answer, or I could have done it this way, x squared plus 18 minus 3x minus 6x. The key is, and then if I simplify it up, I get the same answer. Now the key thing here is that everything in the first bracket is multiplied by everything in the second bracket. So that's double bracket expansion, and students tend to do better with that, although it's grade B, than they do with the grade C harder examples, which we did in the last video. It's very much a method you can practice and get right if you know what you're doing, which is why students do well on it. But let's just look at this example. This is where students start to get thrown, because if I asked you to do x plus a minus b times by x plus 2, okay, you can't use necessarily the methods that you'll use. You can't produce a smiley face because now there's 3 things in this bracket and 2 things in this bracket, 3 terms in this bracket, 2 terms in this bracket. So if you're multiplying these 2 brackets together now, it's everything in here, the x, the plus a and the negative b, times by everything in that bracket. And if we try to do it using the arrows, it gets rather complicated quite quickly, and it won't look like the face shape that you're used to. And you just got to be very careful that you include every term in your expansion. Okay, so what I would really strongly recommend in this case that you do split it up into the 3 terms. Now it doesn't matter if you put the x plus a minus b vertically or horizontally or vertically, you will get the same answer. It's just the grid will look slightly different, but the actual answer will be the same. So that's x plus 2 there. So we've got the 3 terms by the 2 terms. So I'm going to get x squared plus 2x plus ax minus bx plus 2a minus 2b. Okay, and I'm just checking that. Yep, that looks right. Okay, now what we can do is we can write it out in full. Plus 2x plus ax minus bx plus 2a minus 2b. So that is the answer to that expansion, although we always in mathematics try and simplify things as far as possible. and if we look at it and see if anything can add together in this case, and it can't, because you can't really add a 2x to an ax to a minus bx. We'll show you how to factorize that later, but that's as far as it can go at this point. You can add them together in terms of factorizing, but we'll leave it like that for now. Okay, so you can see how this is a different version of multiplying two brackets together, and we could have a 3 by 3. Right, let's try that. X plus a plus 2 times by x minus a minus 2. See if you can multiply those two together. Now you're going to need a 3 by 3 grid, or you're going to have to make sure that you do multiply everything, the first term by everything in the second bracket. So that times by that, times by that, times by that, and then that times by that, times by that, times by that, and so on. And you can see that using the lines it gets quite complicated quite quickly, so it's much better to write it out as a grid. So pause the video, try writing it as a grid. Okay, well, okay, so what you see is I've drawn out my grid and I've started populating it. Now you can see that I've multiplied the x in the second bracket here with every term in my first bracket. So the x times by the x makes x squared, the x times by the a makes plus ax, and the x times by the 2 makes plus 2x. So it's just a way of me getting my results into a structure which is reduces the amount of mistakes I make. It's nothing magic, there's no magical tricks going on here. It's just a way of structuring our answer. Now we're going to do the negative a, so the second term in the second bracket, by everything in the first bracket. So negative a times by x is negative ax, negative a times by positive a is negative a squared, and then we've got negative a times by 2, which is negative 2a. And then we're going to finish off by multiplying by that last thick term here in the second bracket by everything in the first bracket. So negative 2x, negative 2a, and then negative 4. Okay, and I'm just going to check that very quickly, make sure I haven't made any mistakes. It's always worthwhile checking. Okay, good, no mistakes there. So now I'm going to collect together my terms. So I get x squared, and now look, these diagonals sometimes help us. Look, so a negative ax plus an ax makes no ax's. So I could either write that in as plus ax, take away ax, and then I've got a minus 2x plus a 2x minus an a squared, and then I've got a negative 2a, take away another 2a, and then I've got finally a negative 4. Now I could have cancelled them in the boxes. I could have said, well, that negative ax and that ax make nothing, so I could have cancelled those to make nothing, and a 2x take away 2x also leads me to give nothing. Or I could have done it, I can do it at this stage. But basically what we're doing is simplifying to get x squared minus a squared minus 4a minus 4. So that's the answer to that question. Hopefully you've got the same thing. Now what we're going to do is normal. We're going to finish with well, it's going to be 5 questions this time, so when you see the questions, pause, and then I'll give you a little bit of time to do them, and then I'll show you the answers at the end. Okay, well I said 4, but I've decided to give you 5 questions, so here they are. So write them out, pause the video, and then check whether you got them right or not. The answers will be up in a minute. I particularly want you to look at question 3. It's a very important result that comes from it, and it's something that's going to come up a lot in when you're doing grade A mathematics and when you're going on to do A level. So keep an eye out for question 3. Don't forget to use a grid if they get tricky. Okay, so there are the answers. Notice that question 4 I've written as x squared plus y squared plus z squared plus 2xy plus 2yz plus 2xz, but you can have those in any order because they're all adding, so don't worry about if you've got them in a different order. And the last one, I expect quite a few of you wrote the answer to the last one as x squared plus 9, and this is a mistake that we normally see because you see students that do this And they go, well, you've got to square everything inside that bracket, so we square the x and we square the 3, and that gives us x squared plus 9. Well, that's not true. Okay, that's not equal. What we get when we're squaring that bracket is everything in that bracket multiplied by everything in that bracket. So we get the x squared plus 3x plus another 3x plus 9. So that's x squared plus 6x plus 9. And that's a very common mistake that we see a lot. So particularly even at A-level and further maths, where students just square the bracket by squaring the x and squaring the 3 rather than multiplying two brackets together. So be very careful with those kind of questions. That might be something you're getting wrong a lot. And I asked you to take careful note of question 4, and it's a very important result in mathematics. It's called the difference of two squares. It won't be the first. It might be the first time you've seen it, but it won't be the last. Two square numbers subtracted from each other. So a squared take away b squared is the same as a take away b times by a plus b, and it comes up a lot. So that's the difference of two squares. So hopefully you found that grade B work okay. What we're going to go on to next is start to look at factorizing.